some ASMR.
Delicious.
It looks like the piss of someone who hasn't had water in many moons. Hello, everybody. This is Jessie once again. Today we're going to shake things up a little. Instead of ruining some artists, we're going to do a little bit of a historical deep dive on armpit hair. Yeah. On that stuff. On this stuff. I have always been very interested by the politics and psychology of shaving. I started shaving my legs when I was 10 years old, when I was in elementary school in 5th grade, because I felt like I had to. I felt like it was kind of gross or like undignified or wrong if I didn't. And I'm not going to pretend like this is some deeply like traumatic incident, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot. I shaved my legs for years. I still do every once in a while. I kind of refer to it as like a biannual leg shaving. It's either when I'm doing really bad emotionally or I'm just craving that dolphin slick, clean sheet, climb into bed kind of aerodynamicness. I decided to do a bit of a deep dive on the history of shaving body hair and how that is connected to not only patriarchy, but colonialism. And of course, colonialism and patriarchy are like this. They love each other. They're gay for each other. I stopped shaving my legs in my late teens. Honestly, I just didn't want to. I kind of got to a point where I was like, why am I spending all this time doing something that I don't care about? When women or femme people stop shaving, it is viewed as this like drastic political gesture, this huge like message. Obviously there's the stereotype of the man-hating, unshaven lesbian, which is me. I'm not going to lie to you. Welcome back to Jessie's house. Today we're talking about body hair and the history and the colonialism of it all. And by the way, I'm totally not drinking alcohol. I'm sorry, that's gross. It's 8:25 p.m. and I'm trying to pregame and also film a YouTube video. So we'll see how it goes. We first are going to do let's go way back historically. It is said that Egyptians were the first to have like common hair removal. But at the same time, I'm still not sure if it's how common means. The ancient Egyptians, they were doing everything in style, and they were doing everything with a lot of technology. So they had multiple different ways for hair removal. They used sugaring, which is kind of an alternate form of waxing. They used to make tweezers from seashells, and they would also use pumice to like literally just grind, like erode your skin. For the Egyptians, smooth skin was seen as purity and youth, and therefore traits that were considered desirable. It was a status symbol. The Greeks and the Romans, they also had their hair removal moment, and it was also connected with morality, which is where we're going to get into kind of our modern conception of hair removal. But they weren't as advanced as Egyptians. They were mainly just using pumice. They were sloughing that shit off. Another place that was practicing hair removal was Persia. They invented threading. I'm sure y'all know about threading. Whole situation. So, hair removal has been a thing. In places outside of Europe, it was usually associated with youth and beauty, but Europe specifically had a strange connection between body hair and morality, more specifically body hair and sin. Body hair was seen through a lens of sin and virtue. Again, if we think historically and you're like, people have been having beards for so long. So when we talk about the removal of body hair, we are almost never talking about beards. We are almost always talking about the removal of hair on women or femme bodies. In the Middle Ages in Europe, the only place you were really expected to remove body hair from, and again, this is just the royalty, the rich, the bougie, was your face, because that was really the only place of your body that people saw. People weren't having their legs out. They weren't having their pits out. In the Middle Ages, like I said, we're removing facial hair. Queen Elizabeth came to power in 1558. She made eyebrow removal fashionable. Bruh. So I also want to emphasize that although hair removal is something that historically has been documented across the world in many cultures over many times, it is not the only way body hair has been perceived. A lot of Arab countries, unibrows were seen as sexy. They were seen as beautiful. They were accentuated with kohl. In Korea, pubic hair was seen as a sign of fertility and sexual health. So body hair has been seen as very positive in many places. I want to emphasize that although historically there are a lot of ways to remove body hair, there are also historically a lot of practices of not removing body hair and further than that, accentuating body hair. So it's the early 1900s. We're in the States, in the West in general, and body hair removal just isn't really a thing. However, as we get into World War I, things start to change, as a lot did. So in 1915, Gillette releases its first razor designed for women. Gillette and other razor companies had promoted hair removal, mainly facial hair removal for men in the late 1800s and early 1900s, but for women, it wasn't really considered a thing until 1915. Now, this campaign is interesting because they had to tailor so much of the language to appeal to women. And further than that, they had to make ads that convinced women that they should shave because it wasn't something that anyone really had any reason to do, right? Basically, Gillette had to create reasons to convince women to shave. And a lot of those had to play into the idea that it was better, more healthy, or more beneficial for women to shave. Now, it's the 1910s, 1920s, and a lot of razor companies are capitalizing on fashions changing, right? Hemlines are getting shorter. The idea of a sleeveless dress, a sleeveless shirt is becoming a thing that people do. And that allows companies to frame body hair as a problem that needs to be solved because all of a sudden your legs might be on display, your armpits might be on display. And where no one ever really thought about that because it was just considered private, now it is public. They had to change a lot of the vocabulary in advertisements to appeal to women and to make it seem softer and more feminine to shave. But it was seen as a very masculine thing, right? We're using blades, harsh edges, we're cutting things. Like, that was all seen as very masculine. So to convince women to shave, they had to make the concept of shaving softer. And so they changed some of their vocabulary very specifically. Instead of using the word shaving, they would use the word smoothing. Instead of saying legs, they would say limbs. All of this in an attempt to make shaving as a concept and a practice seem not only feminine, but desirable and proper and fashionable. Body hair all of a sudden became seen as unsightly, unclean, unhygienic. Being hairless was seen as being more feminine, more graceful, having more of refinement, being of a higher social class. But it was more than just hygiene. Although being hairy and not shaving was promoted as like unhealthy and unhygienic, it was more than that. It was about modesty as well. During the war, there were large nylon shortages. It was pretty much assumed that women were wearing nylons under their skirts, under their dresses. So now with nylon shortages, there's nothing for women to cover their legs with. This adds another layer of not only are our hemlines getting shorter, there's also no nylons to cover. So your leg hair is out on display. And this incentivizes the desire for hair removal products and industries even more. Guys, I've been forgetting to drink. I'm supposed to be pre-gaming right now. Oh my god, that's liquor. So, in the 1950s, Playboy magazine comes out. And here we have one of our first Western mainstream representations of female bodies, unclothed or scantily clothed, that was circulated everywhere. And now you could go to a store and buy a magazine that showed women with long, smooth, shaved legs, with shaved armpits. We weren't quite on the whole bald coochie thing yet, but legs and armpits there's no body hair in Playboy, right? And Playboy was not necessarily dictating the concept of what it meant to be a desirable woman. Read skinny, white, feminine, hairless, submissive. But it was portraying this to not just men, but also women. Women saw their husbands, their boyfriends, their partners, men in their lives obsessed with this phenomenon of Playboy, and all of a sudden they were being taught what is desirable. And then, therefore, women are taught how to be desirable. Playboy is such a specific sliver of beauty and such a specific sliver of what human beings look like. All of a sudden, all these clean-shaven women are everywhere and very deliberately shown as the peak of beauty, which only emphasizes the concept that you should be shaving even further. Then in the late 60s and 70s, we have this whole hippie movement, and having a bush becomes a whole thing, right? But this is honestly more a phase than anything. I think pubic hair removal wasn't all that popularized because it was considered like a private area and you weren't showing this off. Up until the 70s, early 80s, having pubic hair just kind of was how it was, because guess what? We all have pubic hair. In the 70s, the bikini comes out. Pause for a footnote on the concept of a bikini. So basically, it was called a bikini because this really shitty dude, omitting his name because he sucks, named the quote-unquote daring fashion after Bikini Atoll, which is an island in Micronesia that was violently decimated because the US decided to do atomic bomb testing there, and the local Marshallese people were displaced and abandoned so that their home could be torn apart to support a war they had absolutely no part in. And then this man named the new bathing suit after it because he thought that its provocative nature would hit the market like a bombshell. Literally, that's literally the reason. Yeah. Okay, now we're back. So, all of a sudden, people at beaches are wearing things that are a little bit smaller than they were before. And listen, sometimes a pube or two is sneaking out. That's how it happens. They want to see the light. They want to be free. And we keep cooping them up, okay? Go to new beaches, you guys. Let your pubes be free. Anyways, this is neither here nor there. But this gives rise to the Brazilian. In 1987, there are some sisters, two Brazilian sisters living in New York City, open a waxing salon, and they coin the Brazilian. And, of course, you need a spokesperson. You know, just having a way to wax is not enough. You need a celebrity to promote it, and boy, did they. Some of the main players were Gwyneth Paltrow, Naomi Campbell. We have all these photo shoots of people wearing real skimpy lingerie, skimpy bikinis, and there's not a hair follicle to be seen. So now the vision, the image of what a desirable woman is changing from hairless legs and armpits to hairless period. By the time we're in the late 80s, early 90s, the idea of a woman's body is almost always shown as completely hairless. In movies, when talked about in music, in photography, all of this shows hairless women. Not all of it, but like the vast majority of it. So hairlessness started to become accepted as the normal or natural state of a woman's body, which is crazy. The fact that a aesthetic that is achieved by spending so much money and so much time, and in a lot of cases, a lot of pain and aftercare, that becomes seen as the normal. A large amount of aesthetic labor is required and assumed to be average and natural. People aren't even supposed to know that you grew any hair there in the first place, which is really funny because I remember so distinctly being in sex ed when I was in 5th grade, and we were talking about puberty and hair growth, and my teacher was talking about this, and I remember a little boy in my class, I think he just yelled out from the back, "But women don't grow armpit hair." And my teacher was like, "No, they do." He said, "What are you talking about? No, they don't." He was convinced that women didn't grow armpit hair because he'd never seen it before. And there's that invisible labor of hair removal that, again, especially if you're waxing, there's a lot of pain involved. Even if you're just shaving, there's a lot of ingrowns. Like, there's a lot of invisible labor that goes into a body that is considered to be natural and have no labor go into it. All right, folks, we are back. I stopped filming the first half of the video because A, I had to go to the club, and B, my battery died, and I just didn't have it in me to charge it. I'm so sorry. I'm not. Additionally, I thought I was drinking last video. It wouldn't make sense for me to not be drinking this video. So I got a little bevy. And don't worry, I'm wearing a tank top, so you can still see. I'm still rocking that shit. I'm about it. I'm not a fake armpit hairer. I'm true to this, okay? Now that we have done a bit of the more straightforward history, we're going to talk about how we got to these ideological conclusions. In the 1900s, I talked about how body hair went from being perceived as a negative thing to the lack of hair being perceived as natural. Like many things, we can trace this all back to Darwin. In 1871, Darwin writes, "The descent of man in selection in relation to sex." And the social Darwinism kicked in immediately. As we can assume with Darwin, things got really racist really fast. Basically, in this paper, Darwin states that humans' relative hairlessness was evidence of sexual selection and evolution. So basically the argument is the less hair you have, the more evolved you are. For all animals that have fur, it is purposeful. It has advantages. It keeps you warm, it keeps you dry, a baby can cling to it, it protects you from the elements. There is a reason, like with almost every physical attribute in most creatures, there is a biological reason that it is there. And Darwin is basically saying that because humans have evolved to have less hair, the less hair you have, the more human and the more evolved you are. If we think about it on a scientific level, all the body hair that humans have on us have purposes. Because we've evolved to a place and gotten to a place technologically that we wear clothes. So we don't have to have hair all over our body because I'm just going to put on a little jacket, right? So no problem there. It's easy to think all of our body hair has no purpose, but that is really just not true. He argues has no natural advantages. So basically, his argument was that because there aren't any natural advantages to being hairless, we as humans choose it for a reason because hairlessness is inherently more appealing. Hence, us evolving to become less hairy instead of showing a biological advantage, is showing that we as humans inherently find people who are less hairy more attractive, and therefore we want to mate with them more. Basically, he's saying that science proved that body hair is unattractive. The more hairless you are, the more attractive you are, the more likely you are to get pregnant and have babies, and those babies will be hairless, and your hairless babies will have more hairless babies, and et cetera, and et cetera, and et cetera. So if you are a human and you have a lot of body hair, that means you are less evolved. So now body hair didn't just mean ugly or undesirable. It meant scientifically stunted. And although that's not what we think of when we think of body hair today, if you asked a guy, why do you think it's unattractive when women have armpit hair? They wouldn't say Darwin, right? But it comes from a generational assumption that the less hair you have, the more advanced, the more evolved, and therefore, you guessed it, the more white and Eurocentric you are. Because all of these evolutionary rules are really just ways to try and completely discard people that have been the focus of oppression, that have been the focus of racism. We're just trying to find a way to justify why we deserve power. It's a way to try and assuage our own guilt for being the literal worst people ever. Okay, also, this whole thing of white people are less hairy and therefore more evolved is crazy because our body hair is usually just lighter. It's not like it's not there. It's just lighter. So what's this about all of that? Yeah. What do you mean white people don't have body hair? Are you kidding me? That's a lie. We just can be blonder. That's it. Also, if we're going to talk about being more or less evolved, you think we would have evolved out of baldness? Okay? And, of course, this concept of body hair and evolution was only applied to things that were chosen specifically. Men's facial hair didn't count. Our head hair didn't count. There's so many exclusions. We're cherry picking here, babe. We're cherry picking. It's a classic case of creating the rules, but also the rules about how the rules are applied. So they only prove your point, right? If you're the one making the rules, you can really put any caveats you want. Let's talk about the very physical benefits / detriments to having body hair. Being hairless, there is really only one benefit. And that is that it is less likely that your body will hold on to parasites. And the thing about that is we have showers. If it was the Middle Ages and you're like, damn, this plague is going to get caught in my coochie hair, that makes a little more sense why you would want to get rid of it. We have showers. We have shampoo. Clean yourself. That's only a benefit if you're musty as hell and don't care about being musty as hell. There are actually a lot of detriments to being hairless. Pretty much every single place on the body that you grow hair is purposeful. As much as they wanted to simplify it to be like evolutionarily, there's no purpose, that isn't true. You grow hair on your head because it helps regulate the temperature. It helps keep your scalp cool. It lessens water loss from the top of your head. I don't know why I'm like groping my head. Our eyelashes are there to filter out dust from our eyes. Our pubes are there to regulate body temperature, to reduce friction, to prevent bacteria from transmitting, and also it's beneficial for your pheromones. In the same way that your armpit hair also reduces friction and is beneficial for your pheromones. Our body hair serves a purpose. Having armpit hair, having pubes, all of that is evolutionarily beneficial in the way that Darwin didn't want you to know. Okay? So basically, the concept of hair removal becomes not just associated with aesthetic pleasure, but it becomes associated with being less sinful. It becomes associated with being more evolved and therefore more white. Social Darwinism is basically the idea that people who are not white are less evolved. That's the whole thing. And it is this like shot in the dark of trying to warp science in a way that it proves that white people are the most evolved. We are, I think, as a human race, now able to be like, yes, factually, social Darwinism is not correct. We know this as a scientific fact. However, the morals and the beliefs that are sedimented within that have caught on, and we have enough cognitive dissonance from them to not associate them with social Darwinism anymore. So we still have this idea that being hairless is more natural, more beautiful, more pure, because we've disassociated it from its original proof. I also am aware that my body hair is exponentially more accepted because of my whiteness. Hair and colonialism are so aggressively tied together. Grooming and hair in general has always been politicized. And I don't just mean body hair, I mean head hair as well. If you are black or brown, you're like, yeah, obviously. Fucking of course, don't white-splain this shit to me. There is such a long history of people being forced to remove their hair as a way to cut off spiritual and cultural ties. Hair in many cultures, even in Europe, has been seen to be very spiritually significant. So forcing someone to shave their hair is a very violent act. So basically, I say all of this to say, smooth skin became seen as a marker of femininity. And when I say femininity, I mean white femininity. And white femininity has always been crazy pedophilic, right? Which is where we get to the whole concept of why are we obsessed with people having no pubes? The fact that people are obsessed with having bald coochies is pedophilic. Our bodies naturally grow hair during puberty, and this is a show of us maturing. So when we go out of our way to remove these very biological signals of adulthood, we are then viewing the hairless body as the most attractive body. And who are the only people who are naturally hairless in some ways? Children. It's children. It's babies and children. When you fetishize genitalia without hair, you are fetishizing children's genitalia. I think the concept of being feminist and being pro-choice goes so far to the point that we're actually supporting really, really misogynistic things under the guise of being pro-choice. Because you will feel more confident. That is not just empowering. There are reasons why you feel that you look better like that. And if you aren't able to think and consider the systems that have placed that belief in your head, this is not a feminist choice. Just because you believe that people should have autonomy to do what they want with their bodies doesn't mean that the reason we prioritize certain aesthetics aren't based in colonialism, aren't based in capitalism, aren't based in racism, because they are. So when people say, no, I just feel cleaner without body hair, I just feel more feminine without body hair, I'm not going to stop you. Do what you want. But I do think that people should understand the reason that you feel cleaner when you are shaven is not because the physical reality, it's deeper than that. It's because you've been taught from a very young age that having body hair is less feminine, is less clean, is less put together. Even if it wasn't told to you in those specific words, those are colonial concepts that have been placed into our mind to associate body hair with immorality, to associate body hair with masculinity in a very negative way, to associate body hair with non-whiteness, non-Eurocentricness, and therefore less evolvedness. I was going to say this isn't a manifesto to get you to stop shaving your body hair, but I think it is. I really do think it is.
But, well, it's up to you, I guess. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for tuning in to Jessie's house and my first YouTube video that isn't about art history.
Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Please like and comment and subscribe to this YouTube channel, to my TikTok, to my Instagram, to all of the things. Send it to a friend and please comment. Let me know what you think. Even if it's hate, I love to hear the hate. I eat it up. I love y'all. I'll talk to you later. I know. Shocking. Jessie has nipples. Breaking news. Jessie has nipples.